Oui, oui. Ciao Eric. Quindi se vuoi proprio un caffè a me, sta iniziando a essere interessante.
Laurent, est-ce que tu veux être à côté de moi plutôt?
Oui, oui, alors écoute, je peux faire comme ça, oui. Alors, on va jouer.
Ça, tu peux me guider
Faire un
si tu
switch.
poses des questions à la fin, si tu
Oui.
reconnais les gens.
Tac, comme ça je peux. Suivant qui il y a public, il y a quelques Suisses que je connais, des gens que je connais pas.
Oui, donc ça c'est bien, parce que c'est déjà tout.
Oui.
Merci pour la distribution, c'est parfait.
Ça va bien? Ouais.
Ah ouais, tout à l'heure, ouais, un petit lancement là. Hein. Sympa,
Voilà.
Petit projet avec ceux qui affichent Cinéforum sur qu'est-ce qu'il y a maintenant au niveau européen, au niveau de sustainable, projet pour le green, pour le cinéma.
Ah,
Et
le Eureka, mais il y a ce projet Eureka qui n'est pas encore vraiment en existence. C'est un projet. Je pense que Sustainable Art c'est beaucoup plus avancé.
Ouais. Mais
Je pense que
je vais t'envoyer.
les micros sont déjà.
Les micros sont enclenchés.
Il était enclenché pour le moment.
C'est automatique ce truc? Je vais t'envoyer un peu l'idée que c'est sous un casque aussi, mais je vais ça pour pouvoir, si t'intéresse de participer aussi comme Megadeth. Automatique? Ah, automatique, oh. C'est excellent ça. Ouais. Je pense que c'est eux qui ouvrent.
Faut pas dire des conneries.
Ouais, bien.
Tu viens à 9h ce soir ou tu viens plus tard?
Non, j'arrive à 9h.
Tu fais une petite intro
Non, mais je pense que
un petit
cette
mot,
chose-là,
c'est
c'est
bizarre.
mieux qu'il les fasse Nicolas
Nicolas,
Pogny.
celui qui fait
Selon
un
moi,
petit mot.
selon moi, c'est parce que c'est plus
Merde.
institutionnel. Moi, je suis plus sur pendant les films comme ça.
Merde, j'aurais peut-être dû demander à mon président de faire parce que moi j'allais faire. Je pensais que tu faisais tout.
Comme tu veux. Mais moi, je pense que pour nous, c'est mieux. Selon moi, c'est une facilité c'est welcoming et c'est mieux que le fait celui
Moi
qui
j'aurais
fait.
préféré aussi. Alors je vais lui demander s'il veut, parce qu'il le fait pendant le meet and greet, il peut le refaire après.
Oui, exact. Nous, on a demandé la même chose à Nicolas qui le fait au meeting, à la conférence de presse et aussi
Ah ouais, je vais lui demander. Comme ça on fait exactement la même chose.
comme tu veux.
Yo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me introduce myself. My name is Susan Newman. I am the Executive Director of the Eurimage Co-Production Fund. And I am very pleased to be here today to moderate a panel that I think will be of particular interest to many of you in the audience. In my role as a project manager at Eurimage, I had the privilege and interest of seeing financing plans from films from all over Europe and beyond. And some of the most complicated and detailed financing plans that I ever saw were those that came from Swiss projects. That's not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing, because it means that there are multiple ways of financing films in Switzerland, lots of different pieces to put together, but it also means there are very expert producers who know how to do that and bring them all together. So this panel is intended to do exactly what it says in the program, give you an overview of the film financing opportunities in Switzerland with a little focus on the co-production aspects, because we hope that in the public today there are producers who perhaps have worked, who come from outside Switzerland, have worked with Switzerland in co-productions, or are intending to do so. And this is the refresher course and the update that you might need to make your work more efficient. The film landscape for financing is certainly changing at the moment. So there's some new information in here, which I think you'll find of particular interest. So let me introduce our speakers today. Firstly, we're going to look at the scene setting level, the federal level, with Laurent Steyer from the Federal Office for Culture, who'll set the scene, give the overview information, and perhaps mention some new developments that may be coming on the legal front. Secondly, we'll go to Corinna Marshall from the Media Desk Suisse, who will explain to those of you who are from outside Switzerland the mystery of the Swiss Media Desk and make it all clear. Then, not quite in order of the panelists, as you can see, I propose to go to Tristan Olbrecht from the Valais Film Commission. This is an interesting, particularly interesting thing for everybody, because this is a new film commission and there's a lot to learn here. And finally, of course, we come back home to the Ticino Film Commission with Niccolo Castelli. So we have 50 minutes for our panel. That will include, I hope, a few minutes at the end of the session for questions. So do keep them in mind, and I will come to you at the end of the session, of course, if you have any questions. Without further ado, let me hand over to Laurent Steyer and allow him to paint the big picture for us, Laurent.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Susan. I think it's a great opportunity to be with two funds here and two film commissions, because usually it's not that quite often that we meet on the same panel. People don't usually know what film funds do in the details, and they often don't know what commissions do, if they finance films or if they only facilitate. So it's a really great opportunity to be on the same table today and advertise all together the film financing landscape. Maybe quickly regarding Switzerland, I won't explain too long what the different schemes are. I think you're all aware of the schemes on a national or international level. We, of course, have a selective scheme that is financing majority co-productions. We have a cash rebate program that also finances co-productions up to 40% with a reimbursement of Swiss expenses. And we also have a automatic film funding, which is basis its fundings on the admissions in the cinemas, and also if you participate in a festival in Cannes or in Locarno, you get some automatic points for that. So these are very quickly the three schemes we have. There is one special scheme in the selective scheme for co-productions that we introduced 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, so pre-pandemic, and it's a co-production minority fund. It's about 2 million francs or 2 million euros, closely now, per year. And it's a point system where the producer can calculate the eligibility or fundability of its projects before it gets into the expertise. And it's the artistic value of such a minority co-production is assessed with a lower priority than in the majority co-productions, as we don't want to focus too much on the script when we fund minority co-productions, because usually you have the script written in another country or in a partner country, and it's not the aim influence too much on that, because we can't. So I think it's a very successful instrument so far, because it gives more foreseeability for the production companies that apply to. So this is it's not new, but it's quite new, and I think it's been very useful, and the feedbacks are quite positive, which is better than too positive and too negative. So far. Regarding two new film opportunities we have, Susan mentioned, of course, the new Film Act. We will have an investment obligation for platforms and foreign advertisement windows in Switzerland. It will start in 2024, so we are, maybe for the ones you don't know, we had to pass this law in Parliament last year in September, and then we had a public referendum, so the Swiss population had to vote on May 15th this year, whether they wanted this film funding or not. So the whole Swiss population was, not the whole Swiss population was for that, but it was a 58 to 42% vote, which was very good. Also on a symbolic value, because it's really rare that people just vote on a cultural act in I don't know, maybe we were worldwide the only country who did that. So when we went to Cannes after the 15th of May, lots of countries followed this vote, because it was kind of a more than a symbolic vote on this issue. In the end, it was positive, because we got this 4%, which is very good for co-production as well. It's quite a simple mechanic. It's 4% investments of the yearly turnover of these companies. Amazon, Netflix, for instance, as a platforms, or advertisement windows like TF1, M6, RTL in Switzerland. It's not quite, well, there are other countries with advertisement windows, but Switzerland is particularly concerned because we have the language areas that are influencing, of course. So these advertisement windows, we also have to invest 4% of their yearly turnover, and we calculate about 18 to 20 million euros a year on an additional financial package that could be invested in the future. It can be more, it can be less, but this is calculated on the figures we had on platforms and on advertisement volumes in 2019 when we worked on the law. So this will be the investments will be done by the platforms. So they can choose if they want to invest in co-production, international co-production, in a TV series, in an exclusive rights TV series for Netflix, for instance, is also possible. With the one condition that you need an independent production company. And in the case of an exclusive series, of course, the independency is defined in another way than if you apply for funding. If you are independent co-producer applying for funding, you need a certain amount of rights. And if you want to be eligible for an investment obligation with Amazon or Netflix, then you need to be economically independent in a midterm from these companies. Economically means, of course, not owned or co-owned or whatever by the big companies. So we will have two definitions that we're working on independent on independency of a production company. And we're also closely following and exchanging with our colleagues abroad, and of course with Eurimage, which is a program that is constantly dealing with these questions, I guess. So I won't, if you have questions afterwards, don't hesitate to ask them, and I'm sure we'll inform a little more next year when everything will be more precise. We will start to publish the ordinance, the regulation by the end of September, it's planned, and there will be a public consultation on these criterias. And the other financial opportunity is linked to the media desk. We are very closely working together, almost constantly. The media desk will self-explain itself afterwards, but it's a new development scheme that is aiming at minority co-productions and at minority co-development, which is quite rare, but as we are not in the EU program of Creative Europe, we had to think about how we improve and give incentives for production companies that want to co-develop in a minority way from Switzerland with Germany or whatever country, which we have a co-production agreement with, of course, every European country and Mexico and Canada. So this will be the environment. But I think I pass on to Corinna for the explanations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurent. I'll take over. Yeah, on a supranational level, since Switzerland is part of the Council of Europe, we have been a member of the Eurimage co-production funding system since many, many years. And Switzerland had been member of the media program of the European Union for 8 years, between 2006 and 2013. Since 2014, we're no more member of, not part of Creative Europe, unfortunately. So the Swiss have no longer been able to submit applications to the Creative Europe program in Brussels in the project development scheme, among others. Also the TV programming, which is important regarding series. So directly after that decision, the media desk, which was already existing in Switzerland, has been mandated by the Federal Office of Culture to introduce media compensating measures, and that's what we are doing since more than 8 years now. And we offer, among other schemes, the single and slate development funding, similar to those schemes which are offered in Creative Europe. But with us, they are obviously only open to Swiss producers, which must have a majority share in a project. Now, last year, Creative Europe introduced a new funding line, which is called co-development, and it replaced the previous single development funding. Since the partners in that funding line must come from Creative Europe member countries, Swiss applicants can only participate in those Creative Europe funded projects as a third partner. So that is not a good sign for the Swiss position. So our new instrument, which Laurent mentioned, and which should be introduced next year, is kind of a response to that situation. It's intended to improve the position and the visibility of Swiss elements and Swiss co-producers in minority share Swiss projects. I mean, Swiss co-producers as minority project partners. It is intended to facilitate the docking of projects that are initiated by and in the responsibility of a foreign European partner. We are targeting projects of high artistic and high production value, and which are able to reach international audiences. Our goal is that the Swiss elements be anchored in a project as early as possible, so that an artistic co-production in the sense of a co-creation, rather than just a pooling of financial resources, can be implemented. Projects in that way shall benefit from the expertise of different producers, from different producer profiles, from collective writing, which can boost creativity and co-creation. And talent can be developed together. So in addition, the aim is to pave the way for co-productions, to facilitate a transition to the production funding, which Laurent mentioned, always as a Swiss minority co-production. I will explain some outstanding features, which are those projects can have foreign authors, which is important because such projects rarely find public funding in Switzerland until now. We will also have an automatic bonus point system for children's films and animations, which often require bigger budgets and which are there to kind of increase the audience of the future, which is one of the most important aspects and things which we are confronting today. And we want to enable large projects, which is why the maximum contributions are more or less the same as in our individual project development scheme for the Swiss majority projects. which means that we can allocate up to 50,000 in case of a fiction film, or up to 25,000 francs in case of a documentary. Very important is that the project must be able to become a recognized co-production. I don't know if I mentioned that we are part of the European Convention countries, the European Convention on Cinematic Co-Production, and Laurent already mentioned the co-production treaties, the bilateral ones. Another important aspect is that we can fund up to 70% of the Swiss expenses, the Swiss development budget. So I don't know if I shall go into the details, or maybe we can answer that in questions afterwards. So.
Thank you very much, Corinna. I think that the sort of compatibility between the federal level funding and the media desk Swiss is very clear to everybody. Just before perhaps we move on to our other panelists, if I could address a question maybe to both of you. For me, it's very clear that there is, at a policy level, strong interest in the encouragement and improvement of the visibility of the minority co-production activity. If I can speak from the point of view of Eurimage, the existence of minority co-production funding schemes and things like what Corinna has mentioned, no requirements about the origin of the author, are absolutely critical to moving to the next step in funding, which is to apply to funds such as Eurimage. So maybe would you like to say, perhaps, Laurent, a few words about the will, the strategy and political will to be much more engaged with minority co-production?
The first strategic will was the introduction of this 2 million fund for the production a couple of years ago, because exactly with what you mentioned, that we have to increase not just the amount of minority co-productions, that would be nice, but it was also to increase the level of collaboration and competence within the European and international co-production, better exchange, better previsibility. And the next step was actually the discussion about this co-development fund, because the criteria is not like the criteria you would find in the single or slate criteria of the Creative Europe program. The criteria are more linked to the minority co-production criteria in production. Like you have, we discussed also which criteria we would introduce. I mean, of course, the quality of the project, which is important. Maybe also a link to whether it's in Switzerland or not, but it's also points. It's not like a eligibility criteria. And there is a small discussion also on how do we assess these projects in terms of reciprocity in co-development. Because the question is, do you want to fund a minority co-development with a country that we have a hard time to co-produce in production or not? It's possible to fund it, but it still will be a point more or a point less if you have a point grid who's calculating. For instance, if we would have a co-production agreement with a country X that we have a really hard time, we have a totally unbalanced co-production for years and years and years, this won't be a positive point in the co-development, because if you go into production afterwards with the same project, you probably will have a hard time to be able to finance it. So there is always a small perspective linked to the production phase, and we will see how it works, because Corinna didn't mention it, but the amount of projects that we expect is probably between 4, 5, and 6 a year maximum. It's not like it's going to be an overflow of these projects, because you have to really cooperate together if you want to apply for this funding. It's not just a co-financing activity or something. So you really have to work together on the authoring level already, or on common casting activities or whatever. And of course, you mentioned the fact it must be a co-production. It was also a big discussion point. How can you know that it will be a co-production in the framework of a co-production agreement at this stage? Of course, it's not going to be the whole coup and cast, but it has to be pertinent in terms of percentages already in financing, and who two production companies from two eligible countries working together like this.
Thank you very much, Laurent. I think that sort of clarifies the vision behind it and helps us a lot to understand. And certainly, from my point of view, the sort of earlier the co-production moves in a way of becoming an organic co-production at the development phase, the easier the steps are in the subsequent co-production financing area, with the proviso, of course, of the reciprocity of the relationships with the countries that are envisaged. Thank you very much for that. Now perhaps let's change a little bit the perspective to that of a film commission. So we have here with us Tristan Albrecht from the Valais Film Commission, who's going to present the commission to us, tell us a little bit about what they do and what they propose, because as Laurent mentioned, there's always the question for producers who perhaps from outside a region, what is the role exactly of the Film Commission? Is there a funding package or is it a facilitating role? How does it work exactly? Tristan.
Okay, thank you very much for this panel, first of all. Second of all, I'm just realizing that I'm going to reveal some of our secrets because we just happened to have a press conference in 2 hours to explain everything, so you're going to be holding a secret in the 10 next minutes. Anyways, we started to think about a film commission already 12 years ago, so it's a long time, 12 years ago and 10 months to put it together. It was a long, very long process, not only to make it, but to think about it, to see if it was useful for our territory, for the Valais. And we had the chance to put together the economy, the culture, the tourism together, the promotion of the state, all together to make that same project. And we did something that is not so easy to make because most of the time economy and culture don't get always along very fine. So yes, we did. The Film Commission, I think Laurent made a good statement before. It was, but what is doing a Film Commission? Talking about financing option. They are facilitating. They are helping production to come in the country. They are taking care maybe of scouting, maybe helping with the permits. But what about financing? In Switzerland, it's true. There was no until a few months. You will correct me, Nicolo, about this. There were only film commissions that were here to help finding places to shoot, location, helping with the permits, and things like that. When we thought about the Film Commission, the Valais Film Commission, we directly thought that it was necessary to have an incentive because we had a great concurrency with Cine Tirol, which has some mountain as well, some snow still. And we thought if we don't have the incentive, we have no chance to get to the objective we're aiming for. Cine Tirol already had and has now for more than 20 years an incentive, a film commission, and we thought it's necessary for us not only to facilitate, to help production to come, but also to have an incentive tool to make them come faster, easier, and be able to not go against Cine Tirol, but be some kind of concurrence. So we did that, we thought about that, and we are very happy. Today we will announce in 2 hours that we have a full rollout film commission with a facilitation system and with an incentive tool. So I will go on the incentive tool because the facilitation is already known. How will it work? This is also a question we had. What kind of incentive do we want? Do we want a selective tool? More cultural? Do we want a tax rebate? That's another way to help production. Do you want a cash rebate, which is a reimbursement on expenses? And we chose, for different reasons, to choose the last option, which is a cash rebate system. How does it work? We had to put some criteria. So we chose for strategical questions, political questions as well, to help with cash rebates, long feature films, animation, fiction, series, and they will be able to ask for a cash rebate system. Basically, you probably know how it works, but you have a production that comes on the territory, make some expenses on the territory linked with the territory. There is a list of expenses. And then after that, when the production is done shooting, there is a reimbursement on part of the expenses that are eligible, for the reimbursement. This is for the cash rebate. Then we had to put some criteria, otherwise we will be bankrupt in 2 months probably. So we thought about it. The first condition was to be a long feature film, fiction, animation, series. Then the film has to shoot 5 days minimum in Valais. Then it has to spend at least 100 francs on the territory as eligible expenditures. And then some other criteria came. We come at the end of the game, which means when a production is really already almost completely financed. So we will help only the film that have already 70% of financing acquired. This is one of the conditions. So it's really trying to help the production that are already strong, financially speaking. This is one of the things. And then, of course, for the production who can have that chance to have a cash rebate, we had to put a limit. Otherwise, if we have one big production that come, we will be also bankrupt. So we put a cap of 100,000 francs, not 100 francs, 100,000 francs. And so each production can take advantage of the system. Otherwise, it will be already very hard to keep going with the budget we have right now. This is basically how it works. I will go into the detail, and you are welcome to come to the press conference after that. It's going to be in French, though, but you're welcome. This is basically the cash rebate system. Aside from that, we thought that documentary, short films, and TV reality could also get something. So we thought about some kind of subsidiary fund that will work exactly the same. It's not going to be a cash rebate, but more like envelopes of financing. For documentary, we thought about 30,000 for a documentary, 30,000 francs. For TV reality, it's going to be 20,000. And for short films, it's going to be 10,000. But it's really aside from the cash rebate system. So we will give the priority to long feature films who will come. And if we still have money, which is not sure, then we will also take a folder for short films, documentaries, and TV realities. So we basically really have the 2 axes, financing axis, which is the cash rebate system, which is semi-automatic, and on the other side, the other ad hoc support fund that we have for other kind of formats.
Thank you very much, Tristan. Could I ask a brief question immediately? Perhaps no need to answer if you feel that it goes ahead of your press conference this afternoon. I mean, in an ideal world, how many features would you expect to welcome in any year? Just in the commission side now, not with the cash rebate, and how many then in an ideal world would you imagine would come for the rebate too?
We made a report before doing that. I don't have the exact number in mind, but I think we were optimistic, or maybe not actually, because I'm seeing the number now, of 7 long feature film each year. I'm not sure it's going to be the case. I'm already pleased to have in 2 days a long feature film coming to Valais for 7 weeks, so we'll see how it goes.
Great, thank you very much. And the last question, maybe Laurent and yourself might need to answer this jointly. How does this articulate with the federal level PICS scheme?
Well, on our side it articulates very well because it's a complementary or additional financing. As Tristan mentioned, PICS it's also quite late in the financing. Of course, you come later, and I think it will increase the readiness of projects to be started, and so it's going to probably improve it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's right. It's one more fund, so it's not something that goes against the PICS, for example. It's really something else from a state. So we are taking the federal level, and then we have the state level.
So no problems of compatibility, which is
Not yet.
Not yet. I'm amused too that you have a requirement for the level of financing that's confirmed, and this is, as you all know, a real Eurimage standard that we're looking at all the financing plans to see how much is confirmed. So I'm sure in the future we'll share some notes and it will be very interesting. So can we last now please come to Niccolo Castelli, who's the local film commission. So
Exactly.
It's really nice of you to host us all here in your commission area for the festival. Please tell us a little more about the Ticino Film Commission.
Thank you. Thank you also Locarno Pro and Locarno Film Festival for hosting us. It's a great collaboration between Locarno Film Festival and us. We are the Ticino Film Commission. We are existing since 8 years now. We are growing. When we born, we didn't have really finance incentive, and we are not a usual film commission. We are, I would like to say, more a center of competence for filmmaking in Ticino. And I think it's important. Our strategy is to be strong in both of the legs that a film commission have to have, and I think it's important that both legs, both column are very strong. The first column that we have is the supporting, so location scouting, professional service, permits, authorization, logistics, reception, nice location. And this is very important. I think it's really, really important that a film commission, and that we have this luck. It's not it's something that it's in Ticino. It's that a film commission represents a precise territory and culture. We are in Ticino. We are Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, so we are a bridge between towards the southern Europe, the Mediterranean Europe, and the northern Europe. You are in between Italy and the German part of Switzerland, the French part of Switzerland. So it's a precise territory. It's very also easy to us to represent a territory. It's very strong for us to communicate, and it's easy to communicate also with Italian production, German, Swiss German, and other production. And this is something I think important, but at the same time we have to be able to give some finance incentive in order to be a strong film commission. I give you just some number just in order to understand, because not everybody understands how strong is an impact of a film production in a territory. And what we have, and I think it was something great they did when they grow the Ticino Film Commission. It was that every film production coming in Ticino have to give us all the expenses they are giving in Ticino, or they have to give us a lot of information how the impact is, and we collect all these numbers. We just did the report of the last 4 years. And for example, I can tell you a little bit also in order to respond to the question you did to Tristan before. We hosted in last 4 years 128 productions. We had an economical impact of more than 13 millions. We had the 1,300 production days, almost 9,000 overnight stays in hotels, almost 800 employment. So these numbers that helps you also to convince the economic, the politicians, the institution, to show them how important it is to bring film production in our territory. As I said, we have in a leg, we have the support, and this is important. They have to be strong. We have to improve our professionals, to have a location scout, or to have a really strong relationship with the authorities, and so to be strong, because I think the film production, yes, they are attracted to come in a land, in a territory where they become financial incentive, but in a territory where nobody knows how what's the necessity of a movie. It's like going in a desert and to shoot a movie. It's not possible. So for us, it's important to really improve this part. But at the same time, we are improving all our financial incentive. A bit different from Vallis and for a lot of Film Commission, we are really flexible. We are not hosting only feature films. We are really flexible. We are hosting TV shows, YouTube production, documentaries, realities. We are really welcoming all the production, audiovisual production, because we knew and we saw that all the small production are bringing a lot of know-how, a lot of new ideas. Sure, when we have one big production, for example, this year we will have in September 2 big productions, 7 weeks of shooting. They bring a lot of money, a lot of know-how. But at the same time, when a small documentary comes to tell a story about, I don't know, a Hermanese who lived in Locarno, it's bringing us really strong images for the tourism. It's bringing us also a new perspective on our territory, on our society. The people of the territory are also involved in the story. It's important also for me to be really flexible and open to welcome everybody. And we are also, like the Vallis Film Commission, financing at the end of the financing process. So we are asking that the 80% of the financing is covered before that we can give a financing incentive, but we start much more earlier to speak and to host the film production before that we give the financing incentive. So we are hosting, we are, for example, already giving hospitality, paying overnight stays for the scenographical designer or for the production or for the director to discover our territory, to find the location and so. But at the end, when the 80% of the financing is covered, we can also give some money. And we have a different incentive. We can give as an incentive, and we decide how much through 3 different evaluation that we do. The first evaluation is the touristic impact. We evaluate how much our territory it's promoted through the movie. For example, the movie is showing Ticino, and the Ticino or Locarno, for example, is named on the movie or not. Or we show Ticino, we know that it's Ticino is, but we don't name it. Or we're coming in Locarno, or then, for example, James Bond came in the Verdzaska Dam, but showing this dam as it was a Russian military base in the middle of Russia, I don't know where. So this is, for example, tourist impact. Second element that we evaluate to give a financial incentive is the expenses of the territory. So we ask a budget of the expenses that they are doing in Ticino. And the third is cast of and crew hired on the territory. So we are also seeing how much people and how much actors and so they are hiring on the territory. And this is the first financing incentive that we have. But on top of that, we are since 1 year growing some cash rebate based on regions and communities. So we start with a community, Mendrisio, in the southern of Ticino. And we did this project that Mendrisio town is giving the 30% of the expenses on the territory back to the film production if they are spending this money in the territory of Mendrisio. That means that if they are, even if they are shooting in Chiasso or I don't know where, if they are staying in a hotel in Mendrisio or they are hiring people of Mendrisio, no, doesn't matter what kind of expenses, we're giving back the 30%. And for example, after the experience, also Airolo, the north part of Ticino, is giving the same, always the 30% in the expense of Airolo. And it's interesting for us to start to develop this project. There are small projects where there are focused projects based also in the specific exclusivity of this territory. Mendrisio, it's like the Tuscany of Switzerland. There is plenty of vineyard and so. So with this visit card that I have, I can go to production companies to say, if you want to shoot a movie and you have some landscape about vineyard and you want to make some movies, you have to stay in Switzerland, but you have to be like in Tuscany, you can come in Mendrisio. Mendrisio is welcoming you. This is a small example. If you have a chalet or you have a San Gottardo Alps, we have Airolo. So there are small visit cards, but very precise and very strong, I think, for small or big production company, and every time you can use another card. So it's like playing card. And this is a project that we have. We start with these two communities, but we are trying to bring new communities or new region, sub-region of Ticino in this concept, in this new concept that we have. Like I said, we are financing only when the production company have covered the 80% of the financing. But we thought in the last years, it's important to be close to the production companies already before. And that's why we start with a new project. It's the incentive for Italian language in cinema. So if movies are related with our language, and this is the specificity of our territory, Italian language, we can also help them with the development of the treatments in a screenplay, or also translation of the screenplay and the financing dossier. This is a way to be close to the project already before they start to search for the location, they start already to finance the movie. And this is very important because we saw that sometimes people didn't think about Ticino because they're writing in German, they're writing abroad and so, and didn't think that they can come here and they can develop something with us. So we start this project also with some other institutions that are helping us, institutions like the Swiss Images Society and the Swiss National Television. And we are trying to be close to the production companies really from the first steps, from the treatment until the end. At the same time, we have some financial incentives also for short films and diploma films for schools. Because also there, it's important that school, the newcomers, they have to know what the film commission is, what is our work, and that's why we reserve a small amount of our financial incentive for them. I know that maybe you are confused, but for us it's really important to be much close as possible to every production, and every production has different needs, and for us it's important to be as flexible as possible to be very close to the production companies.
Thank you very much indeed. That was fascinating, because I can see how many different angles you come at your aim from. And I must say, I'm particularly interested in the cash rebate based on communities. For me, that's really innovative. I'm not aware of any other schemes like that. So congratulations. What an interesting scheme. And I'm sure it's developed with the communities in question. So you have a buy-in and something really, positive in terms of the way you can work with those communities. Fantastic. Thank you. So I think we've really learned a lot, heard a lot, but perhaps there are some remaining questions. So I look to the audience to ask if anybody would like to ask anything. I'm not sure if we have a floating microphone. Yes, we do. Perfect. We have two even. Would anybody like to ask a question? Yes, please. Could you wait for the microphone? And perhaps you could say who you are before you start speaking.
Yeah, my name is Heinz Dill. I'm a producer, and I'm part also of the committee for a national film commission. So first I want to congratulate both Niccolò and Tristan for all the work done in your territories. And I want to salute Vallis Film Commission, because you are the first ones who have a real incentive program and offer. And in fact, you are responding, and you said it right, that no incentive, no shooting. And what Laurent and Corina mentioned, because we cannot say that Switzerland has nothing to offer, but they are addressed to official co-productions in a very specific field. But the thing is that for producers coming from abroad who have not, for example, can enter the co-production situation, or they have financing, but they want to come to shoot to Switzerland, we have nothing to offer except now les valaisons. And and Ticino to a certain extent. And this is why, for example, the last James Bond film didn't come to Switzerland, because the second unit line producer, Stefan Zürcher, who brought a lot to Switzerland, they had to do it in Austria because they brought $1 million or $2 million on the table, and that's a commercial and strategic argument that we cannot offer in Switzerland. And this is really something we have to work on, because Switzerland is one of the only countries in the world which has no national film commission as such. So I hope that we can go on with that. And I look forward that the other regions of Switzerland take example of you guys, that we can become a very competitive country also, and that not the people go either outside to France or Italy or wherever, Austria. There was a cynical argument by a Swiss diplomat who said, to respond, but Switzerland doesn't offer something for the Indians. It was regarding the Indians. And he said, yeah, because they go now to Austria to shoot the mountain views. And he said, yeah, they go to Austria, but the Indian viewer still thinks he's in Switzerland. So I hope that we can really correct that soon.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not so sure it was a question, but it was actually a nice compliment to what we discussed, so we don't mind at all. Were there any other questions that might arise? I have lots, but I think I've asked quite a few as I was going through, so I don't want to belabor our panelists. Anybody else like to ask anything? Yes, please, there at the back.
It's a question, I'm Elena Berrazzoli from Peacock Film in Zurich. It's a question for Corinna. Is it possible to have first the project development fund of Media Ersatzmaßnahmen and also the co-development fund?
That means that first you would be the majority part in the production, and then you change, the percentage would change, because for the minority, obviously, you have to be in the minority, you have to have the minority share.
So you switch yourself in the process. Maybe I have just the figures on our minority co-production scheme on production, so maybe it's interesting for you to just evaluate the chances of getting funding in Switzerland as a minority co-producer. We had in 2021, we had 13 applications, 8 projects were funded. So it means like 62% of the documentary were financed by this co-production scheme with an average amount of about 80,000 euros. So there is a high chance with this system to get into the funding with all the defaults it has as well. In the fiction, it was 22 applications, 9 were awarded, so it's 41%. And average amount of 220,000 euros for a minority share. So it gives you just an idea on how the opportunities are. I think it's important because there are also minority fundings that are quite tight, and they have a hard time to finance any project sometimes in other countries. So you get a high acceptance rate, which is well, good and bad. It depends. We hope we don't explode the system. It's more that.
I can also add something to Elena's question. What would be possible is if you're a co-producer, if you are in a co-production and your co-producer, your foreign European co-producer has already get the European co-development money, you could add our minority development scheme to that. So you could bring, as a third partner, up to quite a lot of money into that tripartite co-production.
We have one, what I think will be our last question here, and then we will wind up.
Hello, I'm Jean-Philippe Sepi from, I'm a producer for Télévision Suisse Romande for the current affairs magazine Temps Présent. I'm not sure to understand very well what's going to be the future in co-production with the new platform, digital platform. Will the independent producers have to choose between public funding and private funding from whoever, Netflix or what? Or are we going to go to a kind of third model where co-production with private funding, the famous 4%, which are going to be charged to digital platforms, and, for instance, Pacte de l'audiovisuel, will be possible? So to Laurent, maybe, I would be interested to see how you see the future. Thank you.
I think it will be a little bit the third option you mentioned, because there will be a hybrid type of co-production. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to apply for funding, you need to be independent and you need rights in terms of, even if you are in today's co-production with RTS, or the public television, Swiss television, I mean, you still have rights if it's a packed co-production of like this. And if you don't apply for funding, or if you don't want to apply for funding as a producer because Netflix will finance the whole production, then you just need to be independent in an economic way from the Netflix company. And then there are I think there will be other scenarios like co-productions between national TV, a big platform, and fundings. And if you have that, you have to ask yourself the question of, is it eligible as a investment? Is it a Swiss film or an international co-production? And then in the end, is the co-production structure or is the co-production company that is getting the money independent? Or could it be independent because if you are working for Netflix for 7 years and have 100% intensity, it's not independent anymore because you have no other activity, obviously, than working for one big platform. So I think it's going to be hybrid. And complicated.
Which brings me back to the financing plans. So I hope that we have provided stimulating and interesting information. I'd like to thank all our panelists very much indeed. Tristan, Nicolo, Carina, and Laurent. I'd like to thank Locarno Pro and the festival for organizing this panel. Thank you to the audience for being here, for asking the good questions, and reminding me about why I love Swiss financing plans. Thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. You can print that on a T-shirt.
T'as déjà dit, je viens de plus à la conférence de presse, moi,
Our digital system, which codes the financing plans, we're clicking over pages and pages of the Swiss finance.